What happens when one of the world's biggest pop stars sits down for what should be a routine chat show appearance, only to find herself in the middle of a controversy that spirals completely out of control? Tonight we're diving into the shocking confrontation that left audiences speechless and ended with security escorting a global superstar off one of Britain's most beloved talk shows. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you think really triggered this explosive clash. The red sofa was buzzing with its usual Friday night energy as Graham Norton welcomed his guests to what promised to be another star-studded evening. Taylor Swift, radiant in a shimmering silver dress, settled into her spot with that trademark smile that had charmed millions worldwide. Beside her sat acclaimed British actor Hugh Bonneville, comedian Sarah Millican, and rising star Ncuti Gatwa, all seemingly relaxed and ready for the famously fun atmosphere of Norton's show. Right then, Graham began with his characteristic Irish warmth, adjusting his cards with practiced ease. You've just wrapped the European leg of your tour. Absolutely phenomenal success by all accounts. The fans, the critics, everyone's been raving, but there's been quite a bit of chatter about something else entirely, hasn't there? Taylor's smile flickered for just a moment, so briefly that most viewers probably missed it, but the camera caught that subtle shift in her expression. I'm not sure what you're referring to, Graham. The tour has been incredible. The fans have been amazing. Oh, come on now. Graham leaned forward slightly, his tone still light but with an edge that suggested he wasn't going to let this slide. Surely you've seen the reports. The stories about your, shall we say, rather demanding requests for the venues. Some quite extraordinary demands. According to my sources, the other guests shifted uncomfortably. Hugh Bonneville cleared his throat and reached for his wineglass, while Sarah Millican's usual quick wit seemed to desert her as she sensed the tension building. Ncuti Gatwa looked between Graham and Taylor with growing concern. Every artist has technical requirements for their shows, Taylor replied, her voice maintaining its media-trained composure but with a slight strain creeping in. That's completely normal in this industry. I'm not sure why that would be newsworthy. Graham chuckled, but it wasn't his usual genuine laugh. It was the sound of a talk show host who'd caught the scent of a story and wasn't about to back down. Technical requirements, yes, of course. But demanding that entire sections of the venue be repainted because the existing colors, and I quote, clash with your artistic vision, requiring all crew members to wear specific colored clothing so they don't appear in any background shots. These aren't technical requirements, Taylor. These are the demands of someone who's perhaps lost touch with reality. The audience, which had been murmuring with anticipation, fell silent. This wasn't the playful banter they'd come to expect. From the Graham Norton show, this felt different, sharper, more personal. Taylor's posture straightened, and for the first time since sitting down, her carefully constructed public persona began to crack. I think there's been some misunderstanding about what actually happened. Those reports are exaggerated and taken completely out of context. Are they though? Graham pressed on, consulting his cards again though. It was clear he knew exactly what he wanted to say, because I've spoken to venue managers, crew members, people who were actually there. The picture they paint is of an artist who's surrounded herself with so many yes people that she's forgotten what reasonable looks like. Hugh Bonneville attempted to intervene with a diplomatic, well, I'm sure we all have our particular ways of working. But Graham held up a hand to silence him. No, Hugh, I think this is important. We're talking about someone who's held up as a role model for millions of young people worldwide. Shouldn't there be some accountability here? Some acknowledgement that maybe, just maybe, the demands have gotten a bit out of hand? Taylor's hands were now clasped tightly in her lap, her knuckles showing white through her carefully applied foundation. Graham, with respect, you're making judgments about situations you weren't present for. Based on what? Gossip and hearsay. I'm making judgments based on multiple corroborated accounts from professional people who have no reason to lie. Graham shot back, his Irish accent becoming more pronounced as his voice rose slightly. People who've worked in this industry for decades and have never encountered anything quite like what they experienced working on your shows. The camera panned across the audience, capturing faces that ranged from shocked to uncomfortable to oddly thrilled at witnessing what was clearly becoming something unprecedented in the show's history. Sarah Millican was fidgeting with her dress, clearly wishing she was anywhere else, while Ncuti Gatwa had the look of someone watching a car crash in slow motion. You know what, Graham? Taylor said, her voice dropping to a dangerously quiet level. I came here tonight as a courtesy, to promote my tours and connect with fans. I didn't come here to be ambushed with tabloid gossip and character assassination. Graham leaned back in his chair, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. But it wasn't friendly, it was triumphant. Character assassination. That's quite dramatic, even for you. I'm simply asking questions that I think the public deserves answers to. Questions about how someone with your platform and influence conducts themselves when they think nobody's watching. Nobody's watching. Taylor's voice cracked slightly. There are cameras everywhere. Graham, There are always cameras. Every move I make, every word I say, every breath I take is scrutinized and picked apart by people like you who think they have the right to judge how I live my life. The tension in the studio was now palpable. The usual relaxed atmosphere of the Graham Norton show had been replaced by something much more intense, much more real than anyone had bargained for. The other guests looked like they wanted to disappear into the famous red sofa, while the audience sat in stunned silence, unsure whether they should be clapping, booing, or simply holding their breath. People like me. Graham's eyebrows shot up. Television presenters who ask questions. Journalists who think celebrities should be held to the same standards as everyone else. Yes, Taylor, people like me. And if that makes you uncomfortable, perhaps you should ask yourself why. Chat controls sonnet 4. Chat controls sonnet for Taylor stood up abruptly, her silver dress catching the studio lights as she turned to face Graham directly. The sudden movement sent a ripple of gasps through the audience, and the camera operators scrambled to adjust their angles to capture what was clearly becoming television history. You want to know why I'm uncomfortable, Graham? Taylor's voice was no longer the controlled, media-trained tone she'd maintained for years of interviews. Because you've invited me here, under false pretenses. This isn't an interview, it's a hit job. You've decided to make me the villain in some narrative you've constructed, and you're using your platform to tear me down for entertainment. Graham remained seated, his expression calm, but his eyes sharp, with the kind of intensity that had made him one of the most respected interviewers in the business. A hit job? Taylor, I asked you about well-documented incidents that multiple sources have confirmed. If asking for accountability is a hit job, then perhaps we have very different definitions of journalism. Journalism. Taylor laughed, but there was no humor in it, only bitterness. Is that what you're calling this? Ambushing a guest with gossip and presenting it as fact? Where's the journalism in that? Graham, where's the actual investigation? The balanced reporting? The attempt to understand context? Sarah Milliken finally found her voice, attempting to lighten the mood with a nervous, perhaps we could talk about something else. The new album maybe. But both Taylor and Graham ignored her completely, locked in their escalating confrontation. The context, Taylor, is that you're one of the most powerful people in the entertainment industry, and with that power comes responsibility. Graham replied, his Irish accent thickening as his passion for the subject became evident. When you make demands that cost venues thousands of pounds, when you require people to change their entire working methods to accommodate what can only be described as whims, that affects real people's livelihoods. Taylor took a step closer to Graham's desk, her hands trembling slightly, but her voice growing stronger. Whims. My artistic vision is whims. The standards I've developed over years of performing for millions of people are whims. Graham, you sit behind that desk every week and chat with celebrities about their latest projects. You have no idea what it takes to put on a show for 80,000 people, night after night, while maintaining the level of excellence that those people have paid to see. Excellence. Graham's voice rose for the first time. Taylor, we're not talking about artistic excellence. We're talking about demanding that catering staff wear specific colors so they don't clash with your aesthetic. We're talking about requiring venues to install new lighting systems, because the existing ones don't complement your outfit choices. That's not excellence, that's ego. The word ego hung in the air like a slap. Hugh Bonneville winced visibly, while in Cutie Gatois looked between the two combatants with the fascination of someone witnessing something they knew they'd never see again. The audience was completely silent now, the usual Friday night revelry replaced by an atmosphere so tense, it was almost suffocating. Taylor's composure finally shattered completely. Ego. You want to talk about ego, Graham? What about the ego of a talk show host who thinks he has the right to judge how I conduct my business? What about the ego of someone who's never created anything original in his entire career, never put himself on the line artistically, never faced the kind of scrutiny I face every single day, but feels qualified to lecture me about responsibility? Graham's face flushed red, and for the first time since the confrontation began, his professional demeanor cracked. Never created anything original. Taylor, I've been in this industry for over 20 years. I've interviewed everyone from unknown comedians to world leaders. I've built a career on treating people fairly and asking the questions that need to be asked. What I haven't done is lost touch with basic human decency in pursuit of my own aggrandizement. Basic human decency. Taylor's voice cracked with emotion. Where was the basic human decency when you decided to use your show as a platform to humiliate me? Where was the decency when you chose to believe anonymous sources over giving me the benefit of the doubt? Where was the decency when you decided that entertainment value was more important than treating your guest with respect? The camera caught a close-up of Taylor's face, and viewers could see tears beginning to form in her eyes, though whether they were from anger, frustration, or hurt was impossible to determine. Graham noticed too, but instead of backing down, he seemed to sense weakness and pressed his advantage. Respect is earned, Taylor, and it's also reciprocal. when you treat venue staff like servants, when you make demands that show a complete disregard for other people's time and money, when you surround yourself with people who are too afraid to tell you no, you forfeit the right to demand respect from others. You don't know what you're talking about, Taylor shot back, her voice breaking slightly. You don't know me. You don't know how I treat people. You don't know anything about my life beyond what you read in gossip columns and hear from disgruntled employees who probably violated their confidentiality agreements to give you this story. Graham leaned forward in his chair, his expression hardening. Confidentiality agreements. Taylor, do you hear yourself? You're talking about silencing people who've witnessed your behavior. That's not the action of someone with nothing to hide. That's the action of someone who knows exactly how badly they've been behaving and wants to cover it up. The accusation hit its mark. Taylor stepped back as if she'd been physically struck, her face pale except for 2 bright spots of color on her cheeks. The studio audience was completely transfixed, some holding up phones to record what was clearly becoming one of the most dramatic moments in talk show history. How dare you, Taylor whispered, but her words carried clearly through the studio's microphones. How dare you suggest that I'm covering up bad behavior? Those agreements exist to protect my privacy, to prevent exactly this kind of manufactured controversy from destroying my reputation and my career. Your reputation, Graham repeated slowly. Taylor, your reputation isn't something that can be destroyed by outside forces. Your reputation is built on your actions, your choices, your behavior, and if asking questions about that behavior threatens your reputation, maybe the problem isn't the questions. Sarah Milliken made another desperate attempt to intervene. Look, I think we're all getting a bit heated here. Perhaps we could, but Taylor cut her off with a sharp gesture. No, Sarah, let him finish. Let Graham explain to everyone watching how he's appointed himself the moral authority on how celebrities should behave. Let him explain how someone who makes their living off other people's talent and achievements has earned the right to judge those people. Graham stood up now, matching Taylor's confrontational posture. I've earned that right by never losing sight of the fact that fame and wealth don't make you better than other people. They make you more responsible to other people. Something you seem to have forgotten entirely. Chat controls sonnet for the words hung between them like a challenge thrown down in the middle of a duel. Taylor's face contorted with a mixture of rage and disbelief that anyone would dare speak to her with such directness. The other guests had, now, completely abandoned any pretense of participating in the show, sitting frozen like statues as they watched the destruction of what should have been a pleasant Friday evening chat. More responsible to other people. Taylor's voice rose to a pitch that made several audience members visibly flinch. Graham, I employ hundreds of people. My tours generate millions in revenue for local economies. I've donated more money to charity in the past year than most people will earn in their entire lifetimes. But none of that matters to you because you've decided I'm the villain in your little morality play. Graham's patience, which had been stretched thin throughout the confrontation, finally snapped entirely. Your charitable donations don't give you license to treat working people like they're beneath you. Taylor, your economic impact doesn't excuse behavior that would be unacceptable from anyone else. And hiding behind your philanthropy when you're called out for being difficult is exactly the kind of entitled thinking that got us here in the first place. Entitled. Taylor practically shrieked the word, causing the audio technicians to scramble with their equipment to prevent feedback. Entitled. You want to know what entitled looks like, Graham? Entitled is thinking you can invite someone onto your show and then spend the entire time attacking them. Entitled is believing that your opinion matters more than the truth. Entitled is using your position to bully someone for ratings. The audience was now murmuring among themselves, the atmosphere shifting from shocked silence to something more volatile. Some people were clearly enjoying the spectacle, while others looked genuinely uncomfortable with how personal and nasty the exchange had become. Graham moved around his desk, closing the distance between himself and Taylor until they were standing face to face. Bully. Taylor, asking tough questions isn't bullying, it's journalism. Holding public figures accountable isn't bullying, it's democracy. And if you can't handle being questioned about your behavior, maybe you shouldn't be in the public eye. Maybe I shouldn't be in the public eye. Taylor's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. Graham, without people like me, there would be no show for you to host. Without celebrities willing to come on and promote their work, your entire career would cease to exist. You're a parasite feeding off other people's success, and you have the audacity to lecture me about accountability. The insult hit Graham like a physical blow. His face went through several shades of red before settling on a deep crimson that matched the famous sofa behind him. A parasite. After 20 years of treating guests with respect and dignity, you're calling me a parasite. Taylor, you've just shown everyone watching exactly who you really are. Who I really am. Taylor laughed hysterically, tears now streaming down her face, smearing her carefully applied makeup. Who I really am is someone who's tired of being everyone's target. I'm tired of being blamed for things I didn't do, criticized for having standards, attacked for being successful. I'm tired of people like you thinking you can tear me down for entertainment. Hugh Bonneville finally found the courage to stand up. Placing a gentle hand on Taylor's shoulder, "Taylor, perhaps we should all take a breath here. This has gotten rather out of hand." Taylor whirled around to face him, shrugging off his touch. Violently, "Don't you dare patronize me. Hugh, don't you dare try to manage me like I'm some kind of unstable child having a tantrum. This man has spent the last 15 minutes destroying my reputation on national television, and you want me to take a breath?" Graham seized on Hugh's intervention. "Yes, Taylor, maybe you should take a breath. Maybe you should step back and think about how you're representing yourself right now. Think about what your fans are seeing." "My fans." Taylor spun back to face Graham, her movements becoming increasingly erratic. "My fans know who I am. My fans understand what I've been through. My fans don't need some washed-up talk show host to tell them what to think about me." "Washed up?" Graham's voice was now shaking with fury. "That's rich coming from someone who's having a complete meltdown on live television because she can't handle basic questions about her behavior." Taylor took a step toward Graham, her fists clenched at her sides, and for a moment it looked like the confrontation might become physical. The camera operators zoomed in, capturing every detail of her distorted features and Graham's defensive posture as he stepped back slightly. "You know what, Graham? You want a story. Here's your story. I've spent my entire adult life being perfect for everyone else. I've smiled when I wanted to scream, I've been polite when I wanted to fight back. I've let people like you judge me and criticize me and tear me apart because that's what being a public figure means. But I'm done. I'm done pretending that any of this is okay." The studio fell silent, except for the sound of Taylor's labored breathing and the low hum of the cameras. Graham stared at her with a mixture of triumph and something that might have been concern as he realized how far things had escalated. "Taylor," he said quietly, his anger finally beginning to cool as he saw the genuine distress in her eyes. "Perhaps we should end this interview here." "End it?" Taylor's voice cracked with bitter laughter. "Graham, you can't end it now. You've got what you wanted. You've got your viral moment, your ratings boost, your chance to be the man who broke Taylor Swift on live television, so finish it. Tell everyone what you really think of me." But Graham had gone silent, perhaps finally recognizing that he'd pushed things too far. The other guests sat in horrified fascination as Taylor continued her breakdown, her words becoming increasingly incoherent as emotion overwhelmed her ability to communicate clearly. It was at that moment that the show's producers, who had been watching from the control room in growing alarm, finally made the decision to intervene. Two security guards appeared from the wings, moving quickly but carefully toward the center of the stage. "Ma'am," one of them said gently, "we're going to need you to come with us." Taylor looked at the guards as if seeing them for the first time, her face a mask of confusion and betrayal. "You're kicking me off. You're actually kicking me off the show." Graham found his voice again, but it was subdued now, lacking the fire that had driven their confrontation. "Taylor, I think it would be best if you left." For everyone involved, the words seemed to drain the last of Taylor's fight out of her. She looked around the studio, taking in the shocked faces of the audience, the uncomfortable expressions of her fellow guests, the professional detachment of the camera crew still dutifully recording every moment of her humiliation. "This is what you wanted," she said quietly, her voice barely audible but somehow carrying to every corner of the studio. "This is what all of you wanted, to see me break, to prove that I'm just another spoiled celebrity who can't handle the real world. Well, congratulations, you got your show." As the security guards gently but firmly escorted her toward the exit, Taylor turned back one last time to face Graham. "I hope it was worth it. I hope destroying someone was worth whatever this gets you." And with those final words, she was gone, leaving behind a studio full of stunned silence and the knowledge that everyone present had just witnessed something that would be replayed and analyzed for years to come. Graham stood alone at the center of the stage, looking around at the wreckage of what should have been a routine celebrity interview. And for the first time since the confrontation began, he looked like a man who wasn't entirely sure he'd done the right thing. What do you think really triggered Taylor Swift's explosive reaction? Was Graham Norton justified in his line of questioning, or did he cross a line that should never be crossed with a guest? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more shocking celebrity stories that reveal the truth behind the glamorous facade. Chat controls Sonnet for